Well, good morning, and this is Maryland?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's great because I'm in Maryland myself. My name is Andy Levy. I'm a trial lawyer based in Baltimore, and I also teach at both of Maryland's law schools, the University of Maryland and the University of Baltimore. And I am joining you this morning from a little town called Highland, which is in Howard County, pretty much between, if you know anything about that, between Clarksville and Olney. So I'll let the other judges introduce themselves.
Good morning. Chuck Dunlap. I'm Executive Director of the Indiana Bar Foundation, and I am a little bit west of you in Indianapolis. I'm also an adjunct professor at Indiana University. And I think I saw my Google alert somewhere that you all had a story about you in this particular event that we're now going through. So congratulations. I enjoyed reading that, and I look forward to talking with you today.
Good morning, Maryland. My name is Caitlin Johnston. I am sitting in my studio apartment in New York City, and happy to be here with you today. My day job is I'm a lawyer in-house at Peloton, the bike company. But way back when I was in high school in Indiana, I was a We the People participant, though I never made it to nationals. So you've already bested me there. Congrats for getting here, and good luck today.
And so why don't you introduce yourselves and your teacher?
My name is Abby Olson. I'm a senior at Boonsboro High, and I plan to attend Frostburg State University, where I'll major in biology.
Oh, my name is Connor Lawrence. I'm a junior at Boonsboro High School. I plan on attending a four-year university to major in biochemistry and run cross-country and track.
My name is Brook Morrow. I'm a junior at Boonsboro High School, and I plan on attending a four-year university to play lacrosse and major in pre-law or political science. And this is our teacher, Ms. Fasick.
Hello, welcome, congratulations. So let me read the question, if I can find it here. And you know this is Unit 5, and you know that this is question 2, which reads, Richard Posner wrote that the American public worries more about invasions of privacy than about summary proceedings against suspected terrorists, curtailments of the freedom of speech of the law-abiding, or the right of the media to publish government secrets. Do you agree or disagree with this statement? Why or why not? To what extent, if any, is privacy in jeopardy today? What protection, if any, do people have from privacy violations by governments or businesses? And you can start whenever you're ready.
We agree with Richard Posner's statement regarding the public's view on privacy.
In recent years, the citizens' ultimate concerns have shifted from wide-scale dilemmas of bartering civil liberties for national security to a more progressive focus on personal matters of privacy, often with an ever-growing emphasis on reproductive freedoms.
Posner expresses the idea that even if seclusion and secrecy were well understood aspects of privacy in the 18th century, the public's obsession with these things have deviated from the actual concerns of the framers when fabricating the Constitution.
In terms of media representation, issues dealing with reproductive freedom,
like abortion and LGBTQ+ rights,
are covered far more than attacks on explicitly defined constitutional rights. This rings true especially considering the former issues are often hot-button topics that are much more attractive when trying to boost viewership.
Take, for instance, Obergefell v. Hodges and late-term abortion legislation, two things that were placed to the forefront of the news cycle while other stories sat on the back burner.
Some rights have been placed at a standard of higher worth than others, especially when contrasting publications made by Federalists and Anti-Federalists in the late 18th century with the media monopolies that exist now.
It seems that the media has exponentially become a platform for progressivism and surreptitiousness, appealing to the everyday citizen's desire for privacy and leading them astray from larger-scale violations of liberty.
Privacy is absolutely in jeopardy today, but the extent to which privacy is in jeopardy is still very controversial. The Constitution does not expressly grant the right to privacy, and our amendments only provide an implied right to privacy.
For example, privacy of belief in the First Amendment,
privacy of papers and effects in the Fourth Amendment,
and privacy over personal information in the Fifth Amendment.
Additionally, the 14th Amendment guarantees a fairly broad right of privacy through the granting of fundamental rights via substantive due process.
Social media is one way that Americans' privacy has been placed in jeopardy today. Despite the 79% of Americans that freely release private information, social media companies can and do release private user information legally, because often a user clicks "I agree" without actually reading the contract.
When the user clicks "I agree," the company has the legal right to disseminate users' information as they see fit according to the contract. In 2013, Facebook sold users' information to the Cambridge Analytica firm on the basis that users agreed to the terms of use.
This jeopardizes the right to privacy because companies can share user information based on these contracts even if users never actually read the conditions. In 2017, the Deloitte study created a fake social networking platform and wrote terms and conditions that included the disclosure that the users would give their firstborn child as payment and any information posted would be given to the NSA.
98% of users agreed to these terms.
Another way privacy is in jeopardy today relates to the idea of high-technology cell phones. Features like facial recognition and tracking of devices can essentially be incriminating.
This data can open the door to government intrusions of privacy. People do have many protections from privacy violations from both the government and businesses. While not specifically defined in the Constitution, privacy is still an implied right.
The Supreme Court has actively protected this idea in cases like Lawrence v. Texas, which protected same-sex couples' right to privacy in their intimate relations, and Griswold v. Connecticut, which ruled against state restrictions for contraception, and more specifically in the area of medical privacy.
In regards to the medical field, HIPAA gives protections from business privacy violations. HIPAA protects patient confidentiality, which is important because without this safe zone, people may be reluctant to access healthcare for fear their private information will be shared.
For instance, HIPAA can protect the privacy of an 18-year-old whose parents still want access to the medical records. These parents would only have access with the written consent of their son or daughter.
FERPA helps protect student confidentiality in schools with regards to records, photo access, and personal information.
Great, thank you very much for that opening. Let me start off by, in your opening, you made reference to the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. And it just made me think, if they could get on a time machine and sort of appear today, who would have more of a claim to be able to say, you see, we were right? The Federalists or the Anti-Federalists?
I believe that the Anti-Federalists would have more of the claim of, oh, I was right about what's occurring nowadays, especially regarding privacy. The Federalists recognize that we need a limited government, but also a strong national government, while the Anti-Federalists were a bit more wary about that. And for good reason, as we've seen numerous privacy violations even in the past few months pop up.
I do think it would be hard to give either one of them the upper hand and say they were right, because our world is ever changing, and to say that they needed a specific law that could encompass what is happening these days would be virtually impossible. They didn't know that privacy is to the point where it is today with social media and cell phones. It'd be very hard for them to say, well, we were right. They didn't know that stuff like this was going to happen this many years later.
Adding on to what my colleague Brooke said, yesterday's papers are today's PDFs. When it refers to privacy, privacy is ever changing. At one time, privacy was in your home, your papers, but now it's on your laptops, your phones, all the different forms of technology. So I think it's hard to necessarily give someone the upper hand and say who was right when our society is ever changing.
Thank you. I want to move to the very current scenario that we currently find ourselves in, COVID-19. And in this environment with contact tracing and tracking of movements in the name of public health and being able to have government assist with that, how should the courts balance the public safety requirements and the public safety role of the government versus the individual and the individual privacy rights that are at stake? Is there a framework? Go ahead, sorry.
I think the Supreme Court has done a good job at, keeping people's privacy in check. Interestingly enough, there was a video on Facebook posted by CNN that talked about a company called Xmode that tracks the movement of devices And they said they could help see the movement of the virus, specifically the coronavirus, with their company because they were tracking cell phone information to identify future hotspots, and they took all the cell phones at the Fort Lauderdale beaches, the spring breakers in Florida, and they tracked those cell phones through to back to their homes without these people knowing. It's just them seeing the device information, getting location data, and they tracked 25 million cell phones each month and 40 million more around the world. And if that's not a privacy violation, then it's literally tracking your every move. And they can get this data, and they say that it's not personally identifying, but they did admit that if they wanted it to be, it could be personally incriminating.
Adding on to my colleague Brooke, I found something that came from the UK where they were using security cameras like outside of stores, red light cameras to capture people's license plate to monitor how their social distancing rules are working, to see how the traffic is declining, to see they can look at people's faces and identify you if you're not maintaining 6 feet apart, and they'll fine you if you aren't maintaining those rules. So
I also just, I'm sorry, Abby.
Who says when that is going to come to a stop? And with society changing, you never know. Are they going to maintain this tracking and monitoring using these cameras or technology, cell phones?
I also discovered how people were, and state governments were considering the idea of using drones, linking up with drone companies that to create drones that would allow the drones to track your vitals and your temperature to make sure that no one around was infected with the virus. I fear that if the Supreme Court does not step in soon, we will very rapidly be entering into a totalitarian, almost Orwellian kind of age of surveillance. And I fear, while it is necessary that we do something to help stop the spread of the virus, I fear what kind of precedent this could create for the future.
So I want to quickly get in. You mentioned the firstborn child example and the social media terms of service. It sounds like this panel is pretty against the use of data without some sort of explicit consent. But isn't it incumbent upon users to read those contracts before they enter into them?
When I was researching the Deloitte study, I found a lot of information that said that some of these companies will make these lengthy agreements, and a lot of people, I will admit I am guilty, I don't 100% read over these agreements due to the fact that they are so lengthy and there's so much information combined into such a small document and fine print. Can I keep going?
Yes, you can finish your thought.
I just think that if the companies could find a way to kind of make the information simpler and easier for kids my age or older adults who aren't as tech savvy to realize what's actually in those documents, and for us to better understand what we're reading and agreeing to.
Thank you.
Great, congratulations. I think that is time. Fantastic. I'm going to just start by, first of all, congratulating you on doing this brave new world that we're in. It's actually, it's very cool. And it's miraculous in a way. I mean, the fact that it's working as well as it is. Substantively, I thought you guys were great. I think that this is, Mrs. Vasic, I think this is the best Maryland team I've ever seen. And I liked your opening, the reference to the Deloitte study. That's so interesting. What a great factoid. I think, Abby, it was you who said yesterday's papers are today's PDFs. That's a great line. I wrote that down. I was a little afraid I was going to be giving you a curveball by asking you the Federalist, anti-Federalist question, but since, I figure it's fair game since you mentioned it in your opening, and you guys I thought sort of hit it out of the park. I thought each of your three answers was was on point and was responsive and was thoughtful. So so definitely like a total shout out to you guys for just really doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And again, I've said this before and I'll say it again, but the idea of the time constraints are frustrating sometimes when you have a group of folks that you want to talk more about this with. And there's so much to talk about in this particular area. And I think from the question that I asked about, you know, the current situation and how government should react and how courts should play a role in this, you know, and I think we're seeing some of that pushback to a certain extent from people, you know, and where we are and trying to figure out the proper role between public safety and you can see where things could lead to, and some of the examples that you were mentioning are, you know, in the name of good, a lot of things can happen that aren't necessarily good. You know, we're doing these things to try to create public safety and curb the spread and all that sort of thing. But you have these tools now that government has access to. And the other aspect too, I thought it was interesting, you know, is it okay if social media and Facebook and all the private actors are doing it versus the government, and how do you draw those lines, and what's the role when government is trying to get that information from individuals that have it, that are in the public or the private realm? So great job. A lot of really great topics to discuss. And I'm really happy to have spent some time with you this morning.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent job. When you all were answering Chuck's question, I was thinking about the fever camps that China has implemented, where they just effectively seize you if your temperature reads past a certain number and put you in a camp, and you don't see your family until you've recovered. You know, that is not something that I think America would allow to happen, but the slow encroachment of technology, you kind of, you know, you don't know where it's going to lead. So I wish we had a lot more time for us to dig in. Again, that is a testament to your preparation. I thought, you know, the best groups bring us from constitutional principles into present day, and you guys made sure to pack that into both your, you know, prepared remarks and your follow-ups. You showed us a wide range of preparation and brought in new stuff that we you know, haven't heard yet, and even into the follow-ups, you were bringing us new material and new stuff to think about. So great job.